Hello, everybody. Welcome back to One Thing at a Time. I'm Olivia, and today's episode is a little different. It's a solo episode with just me today. So I know that's a little bit strange that I don't have my leading lady with me, but Miss Hailey is in Paris. She's living it up in Paris this week. And so I just decided that the show has to go on and, decided to take the throne. So basically, it's just going to be a solo episode. And next week, Hailey will do a solo episode to give me a little bit of a break because next week is intense. Like, I am going to need it. This week, to be completely honest, has been a little bit treacherous. Yesterday I went to a concert with my mom and my brother and my boyfriend, and the night started great. Started fantastic. We went to go see Willie Nelson. And if you don't know who Willie Nelson is, then you should. We figured that it was probably the last time that he was going to tour, so we decided to go see him, and it was a great time. So, the night started out great. The vibes were immaculate. And then we go home, and honestly, my mom probably doesn't want me to share this, but I don't even care. Then mom slipped and fell and fractured her foot. So it was a really long night, and honestly, I am so tired. But you know what? We're out here, all right? We're thriving off of caffeine, and we're going to make it work, okay? So that has been my week. I hope everyone has had a good week despite some of the bad news that we received this past week. It's just been a little weird, So we talked about last week how Mercury was going to be in retrograde. Yeah, it started yesterday, I'm pretty sure. So that's really fun. So I can already see Mercury starting to affect. So let's just all say a little prayer for everybody, really, like everybody. So anyways, today I wanted to kind of talk about different types of styles and how to find your editing style. So when I started photography back in 2020, I really didn't know what style I was, nor did I even know that that was a thing. I slowly learned that people, just like anything really, like with art and creatives, they show their talents a lot differently. So there are a couple different types of editing styles. There's so many that I can't even touch on all of them because I feel like sometimes people's editing styles are truly so unique and it's really hard to put into words how they look. But here are just a few that are more mainstream that we can talk about. So the first one that you might see quite often, even with wedding photography, is light and airy. So that will obviously be like the very light tones and very bright. And then you have the dark and moody side of photography, which is very, very dark. I don't even really know how to describe it, but think of it like very like moody and I don't want to say gloomy, but like overcast. If you can think of like an overcast, that's the equivalent to dark and moody. I will touch on all of these because I feel like I've been through pretty much all the editing styles and I finally found the one that I like. So I will touch on them all. The third one that we have is true tone. And obviously that's pretty self-explanatory. True tone is how you see it with your eyes and just like a little bit more elevated, obviously, with the just very true tone, true to the colors, true to skin tone, all of it. And then we have some editing that gets a little bit more um, colorful, and you can actually tell. Like, if you're a photographer, you know that in Lightroom, there are certain things that you can mess with to make your images look a certain way. So we have some editing styles that have purple hues and some that have red hues and some that have green hues. So those are just a couple that I have noticed in the 3 years that I've done photography. And I just want to say, like, it is okay to have your style change while you grow. Like, for instance, for me, when I first picked up a camera, I didn't know how to edit really at all. I used the Tezza app, which, if you're a photographer, you're familiar with Tezza. I adore Tezza. I think that she is an amazing, beautiful human being. So that is what I started with at first. I would use some of her filters on there, and then once I educated myself and got a little bit more into it, I started doing some research on different presets, and there are 100 million different presets out there. Phil Chester, Dirty Boots Messy Hair, Oats and Honey. Like, literally, there are so many. I can't even like name them all on my fingers. So when I first purchased a preset, I got it off of Etsy. And to be honest, I wouldn't recommend this anymore. But I got a preset off of Etsy, and it was more like I don't even know how to describe it. It was kind of like a darker toned preset. So, and I really liked how the images looked on the example pictures, so I decided to try it out. Didn't really care for it, so I bought another preset by Annie Graham, which I'm sure you guys know who Annie Graham is. And I used her presets for a really long time. And then I decided that I wanted to try and see if, maybe a lighter tone was for me. So I bought Don Charles. And it wasn't for me. And so I edited with Don Charles. I went back and forth with Annie Graham and Don Charles a lot. And that was the thing with my editing back then. It was very inconsistent, and you could see that. But that's what I did way back in the day, 3 years ago, when I first picked up a camera. Like, I didn't know what exactly I wanted to do. So I just tried everything out. And honestly, little disclaimer, I do not recommend buying so many different presets. I probably spent over $1,000 in presets, and most of them I don't use. And I really kicked myself because I was cleaning out my Lightroom presets the other day, and I realized how much money I wasted on presets when I could have, I don't know. I just wish I would have spent money on different things. And the thing with presets is sometimes people are a little shameful in the photography community about buying presets. And honestly, if you want to buy them, buy them. Like, I'm not telling you not to, but just do a lot of research, really figure out what style that you like, and then go with that. And if it evolves, you will get better at editing as it goes on. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. But so just do a lot of research on what presets that you may like, and then figure out which ones are a little bit more diverse, and it allows you to have multiple different edits with different presets. Because normally, like, if you buy, like, I know Phil Chester is so diverse in how, because people edit with him, I don't know if it's him or I don't know, with their presets. And I see so many different edits, and I'm like, wow, I would never know that this is Phil Chester because everybody edits so differently. So I would just look for that. If you're trying to find your style and you're trying to look for presets, I would just look for that. But if you want to create your own presets and make your own from scratch, that's where it gets a little bit different. And I really do think that presets help in a way to figure out your editing style. So I wouldn't really necessarily recommend trying to create your own edit from the start. That becomes more of a thing when you get really advanced. Okay, so I kind of wanted to talk about a little bit how I kind of touched on it a little bit, but so my journey with editing. I have been through a lot with editing. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it, and right now I do love it. I think I finally, found the editing that I love, and it's, to me, when you find the editing that you love, it will be so easy that you'll never want to change it. So I discovered Cassidy Lynn, and Cassidy Lynn also has a podcast, and she's on Instagram, and she is an influencer and educator. And I found her through TikTok, and I started following her, and then I really loved the way that she edited. Like, there are a few things that I would probably change with, how the edit is, but I loved her edits. And then she came out with presets, and they were relatively cheap in the beginning, like $30, I think, for 5 different presets. So I bought them, and I just kind of figured out which one I loved the most. And I started using that one for 2 years. Well, now it'll be 2 years. So my editing hasn't, I went through a phase where it was kind of true tone, but kind of more on the warm side. And then I hit a rough patch where I was editing really, really dark, really, really orange, really brown. It wasn't cute. And looking back, I really wish that I never did that. But I really think that editing reflects how you feel. And back then, I wasn't feeling great about my work. So it's just kind of one of those things that what's the word? Your how you're feeling and your outlook on things, how it changes your art is so crazy to me, because when people used to be like, oh yeah, I made this when I was sad, and you could clearly tell, that's how my editing looked back then. But you know what? We conquered it. We got out of it. And we thrived. And we learned something. And so then back then I was editing really dark. Like, I really wish that I could go back in time and not do it that way. But you know what? It had its moments. And if you go to my Instagram, you can actually see that where I was coming out of that phase. If I archived a lot of my pictures. That's why there's not as many as there used to be. But you can kind of see me coming out of that phase and going into what I am today. So how would I describe my style today? I would describe it true tone. I've fallen in love with very crisp, very really nice whites, very greens. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I really like my greens to look very green and very dark. I don't really like my greens to look kind of brown. I don't like them to look very yellow. I just want them to look green. Like how you see green, that's how I want green to look in my photos. And so it was really like such a learning curve to, learn a different editing. But honestly, if I look back, me editing dark and moody was a lot more complicated than it is now. And I really do think that it had its moment, but now it's dead. So we're done. I broke up with my editing style. So And I still do have such a love for dark and moody editing. Like, I think it's like chef's kiss, like moi, if done correctly. And I really don't hate any sort of editing because I can see the art in all of it. But my editing dark and moody, not it. And you'll never see the light of day for that ever again because because it's one of those things that people show you old pictures and you're like, ooh, like that was not my best. But you know what? That is the whole point of growing. And I do think that if you don't ever see progress in your work, you're not growing. And that goes the same with editing, that goes the same with posing, that goes the same with customer experience, everything. If you don't see any progress, you're not growing. So if you want to see if you want to, a good way to tell if you are successful is to see if you've made progress. And I can almost guarantee that you have. Go back to when you first started photography and pull up pictures and compare it to what you're doing now. I can almost guarantee you it's better. Okay, I'm kind of rambling because I don't have Hailey here to keep me on track. And this is how I tell stories, guys. If you're ever interested in listening to a story from me, don't, because I'm like a squirrel. Like a squirrel. I'm like a dog. I just go squirrel, squirrel. Like I can't pay attention. Someone is walking very loudly down the stairs. Sorry. Okay, how to find your editing style. I cannot fully answer this question, but I do have some advice, and I kind of gave you some advice when we were talking about presets, but I would say if you are editing that way for 6 months or more, you found it. And if you love it and it's easy for you, stick to it. And if you're not in love with it and you aren't building clientele like you think you should be, or then I would recommend tweaking it a little bit. And I really think that we need to all be open to criticism because, let's be honest, our edits are not perfect. They'll never be because we're human. So I would take critiques into consideration in moderation, though. Like, don't completely change your editing style because someone said that they don't like the way that you edit, like just little things. But I would take it into consideration and see how you can improve. But yeah, so I listened to a lot of critiques from people, and I just kind of found that that editing how I wasn't for me. And I knew that if I wanted to be successful, I had to listen to what other people were going to say, whether I liked it or not, honestly. And I really do think that is a tough pill to swallow when you get your first client that's just like, I don't like this. But you really should consider a lot of things when you have your own business. And one of them is that, like, let's be honest, you're never going to please everybody. But you really do need to be open to constructive criticism when it's given. And I think that is just something that you have to learn how to do, because I'm going to be honest, when I first got that constructive criticism from a client, I didn't take it well. But you also, you know what? You just have to wipe those tears and keep going. Because as Hailey would say, it is survival of the fittest. People out here are thriving in this career that we have, and they are obviously with all different types of editing styles. So don't think that you have to become a light and airy photographer to book people, because that's not the case. People will book you because they like your work, just because you have a different editing style to what it may be popular at the time doesn't mean that it's not good. And I knew that when I was a more dark photographer, but I still wasn't good with my editing, so I wasn't happy with it, so I was putting out work that I didn't like. And if you have that feeling, then something needs to change. I'm just kind of rambling, but I hope that was helpful. Let me see if I have any other thoughts. So I'm going to talk about editing really quick. So in Lightroom, if you use Lightroom, this is only for people that use Lightroom, because if you use Photoshop, I can't help you there. But for Lightroom, there are many different things that can really change an edit. And maybe we'll go into this deeper whenever we can with Lightroom, because it's so complex. But if you go into Lightroom, let me just open Lightroom really quick. If you go to a photo and then you go to your presets, you pick a preset that you want. And then you can go into the light and you can do the curve. The curve changes so much about an image. Just honestly, if you want to get better at editing, just play with it. Just play with the curve and see what you like and what you don't. Play with the reds, the greens, and the blues and see what it does, because that's the only way that you'll get better. And then if you go to the color section and the color grading, I love playing with color grading because I really do think that it makes or breaks an image. And I love the way that the color grading makes my images look. And then you can go down to the white balance and play with the temperature and the tint. And that's how people get those more purpley hue, green hue photos, is because they're playing with the tint of the image. And same thing with the temperature. If you have the dial all the way to the left, it's going to be very cold. And you can tell that it's really cold. And if you put it all the way to the right, it's going to be like fire hot red. So just play around with it, really. And I feel like that is a good way to gauge what you like and what you don't like. And it helps you get more advanced in the program that you're using, because I think it's really great to be familiar with all of the features on Lightroom, because it is so complex. It actually not as complex as Photoshop. Don't get me wrong, Photoshop people. I'm not saying that Lightroom is hard, but for beginners it might. But yeah. And yeah, just play around with it and have fun with it. That's the only way that I can really gauge how to find your editing style. I know I said a whole lot of a lot, and honestly, if you have any questions, you can just DM me, because I think it's really interesting how people put an emphasis on finding your editing style when you're a photographer. And I do think it does come with time as you get better. And you will get better. And if you think that you're not getting better, you are. And that was a really hard thing for me to gauge also. Getting better without seeing progress in yourself. But if people see progress in you, obviously you're getting better. And that's why it's good to have peers in the same career path as you, because they can provide you with some good feedback. So I definitely recommend getting your girlies together, or your men. If men are listening and they're photographers, gather around your friends and just go through images and critique yourself. Do it for real. I critique myself all the time. And that's the only way to get better. And then your friends will give you constructive criticism, or they'll praise you. But find yourself some good friends. Don't only grab friends that you know that are going to praise you. Don't do that. But get you some friends that will be honest with you, and then you'll get better. So kind of a shorter episode. But you know what? I know that Hailey's living it up in Paris, but she better make it back because we have a wedding on Saturday. So, anyways, I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of the week. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me. My DMs are always open. And then we can chat some if you want. But anyways, you can find me on Instagram at Olivia Rodriguez Photos, pretty much everywhere, Twitter, TikTok, except for Facebook. That is Olivia Rodriguez Photography. You can find Hailey pretty much everywhere at Hailey High Photography, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, literally everywhere. Okay. And you can follow the podcast while you're at it. One Thing at a Time pod. We are on Instagram and TikTok. We're trying to put out some fun content. But you know what? We're only two humans and we're approaching wedding season. So I hope you guys have a fantastic week, day, month. I don't know when you're watching this. But anyways, we hope to see you guys next time.